Coming your way, here are 10 everyday symbols and icons with a past and history that will blow your mind. Number 10. The ampersand. Sitting there right on your keyboard, like a bloated-out dollar sign on crack, is one of the most used figures in creation. During a pesky part of its travels, the ampersand was first used throughout the days of the Roman Empire, a quick way to join things together. Its peculiar and squiggly formation, a logogram, is a union of the letters E and T in Latin. They were occasionally written together to form a ligature ET, meaning aside from extraterrestrial. And that's the first stop in this detailed road trip. Now let's hop in our time machine and fly back to the middle of the 19th century. During this period, the symbol was recognized as the 27th letter of the alphabet and taught as such to British school children, who would recite it after the letter Z in the alphabet. Basically, the sign became so popular that it's actually warranted a place with the big guns, since it would have been confusing to say X, Y, Z, and kids started repeating in per se, and in fast slurred toddler gibberish, it ended up sounding as ampersand. Then in 1837, the term officially entered common usage and the dictionary. Number 9. Caduceus. Have you ever heard the oxymoron army intelligence? Well, this one will drive the truth of that saying home. The staff of Mercury, or Hermes, pictured here, depending on your methodological tent pole, is the medical go-to symbol for a lot of health organizations and professionals. It's a short rod, intertwined by two snakes, and topped with a pair of wings. Now here's where the big oops comes into play. Hermes, for all his many talents, isn't exactly known for his medical degree. He was the god of thieves, inventors, merchants, and messengers. In all fairness, the big guy doesn't know the difference between a tic-tac and an aspirin. On the other hand, back in Greece at around 1200 BC, there was this fellow called Asclepius, a brilliant physician who eventually bordered the lines between fiction and reality and actually became outlandishly a god. His field of practice and divine influence was healing. Medical schools and shrines were dedicated to Asclepius back in those days, with his iconic coat of arms being a long wooden staff with one snake and no wings. Thousands of years later, one lonely officer in the U.S. Army Medical Corps mixed the two together and slapped Hermes' staff on a couple of vans and medical tents. So, in other words, he chose symbols from the wrong god. When you look at the insignia for most healthcare organizations, you are actually staring at a huge mistake. Number 8. The heart logo. Candy jewelry. That cute way certain co-eds to their eyes. 1,000 biker tattoos. Perhaps the heart symbol truly is one of the most commonplace and hackneyed logos in existence. It's all over the place now, and here's the rub. It looks nothing, not even close to a real heart. The reason's simple. We humans fouled up along the way. The first depictions of the heart symbol can be traced back to old Roman days. It was originally imprinted on coins and letters as a way to identify a seed pod that's looked exactly the same. A seed pod of the silphium plant, a herb used for one purpose only, as birth control, a herb that also no longer exists because it was pointing to extinction. After all, this was the time of the Caligula. Since it was used for birth control, silphium was first associated with sex and later became a symbol of love. Oh, and one final thought: the Romans usually linked to this heart symbol, which was mostly depicted upside down, to another human organ. Can you guess which one? It starts with tes and ends with kles and usually dangles like Prince between every male's legs. Number 7. The barber pole. This one has a vile and sinister backstory. This classic red and white swirly stick was first introduced back in the Middle Ages, back in those Black Death-filled, happy-go-lucky, hope-you-reach-40 heydays. Doctors were too struck up to perform common surgeries. Yuck, blood was their go-to squeal. There was a demand in the market and a void needed to be filled, hence no strangers to doing nasty things. Barbers filled the gap and started piling up the dough. Cutting hair, trimming beards, removing thumbs, slicing off tumors. They really broadened their job description. During a time, these barber surgeons, that was their true label by the way, spent most of their day bloodletting, which was basically an ancient system of medicine whereby blood was withdrawn from the patient. This was common practice used by the yokels to fight off everything from a bad toothache to a gypsy curse. These willy merchants, seeking to advertise their profession and draw in the nutballs, started hanging blood-soaked bandages over their doors. A couple of centuries later, we have the sanitary barber pole. Number 6. Skull and crossbones. This icon is a well-established image that has worked wonders for Johnny Depp's film career. Its main stronghold, and where you can usually find it, is over anything that's guaranteed a speedy trip 6 feet under, poison, nucleus stuff, pissed off bikers, villains, and just about anything you don't want to mess with. The logo is mostly associated with pirates, and most people think that that's the place modern society borrowed it from. Wrong. The most pirate flags were personal designs. No two were identical. They were brands used to strike terror into ships. Each one represented one crew and one crew only. Blackbeard and Henry Morgan sailed under different seals and took glory and booty under that seal. They forged a legend under that flag. On the other hand, the skull and crossbones actually first came into lore during the golden age of piracy in the Bahamas. Its creator was the feared buccaneer Calico Jack. The man, it was rumored, was inspired while walking through the streets of Nassau and stumbling drunk on the gates of the Regent's Cemetery. On the main arch, as a universal sign used all throughout the world in yonder times, skull and crossbones, a practice that had begun with the Spaniards back in the Dark Ages to label burial grounds. So essentially, it's originated as a memento mori on tombstones. Number 5. Yin and Yang. This is an ancient symbol first used during the better part of 400 BC and was discussed by Zhu Gan in Taoist philosophy and the school of naturalists. The symbol that has mostly stayed true to its original meaning has existed in Chinese literature for the better part of the country's millennial history. This logo basically describes how two opposite contrary forces may actually benefit from each other and ultimately become attracted by their negative spaces. In the end, one cannot exist without the other. According to legend, the symbol was an artistic representation of sunlight playing over mountains and valleys. Yin, in this black section, meaning the shady place or north slope, while Yang, the white section, translates into the sunny place or the South Pole. Number 4. Fleur-de-lis. This emblematic and mostly French symbol became a mainstream and ubiquitous decorative design for royalty. In a way, it became one of the first logos and brands of the modern time. The fleur-de-lis, or flower of lily, graced countless European coats of arms, and like a wildfire fad, the rat design crossed borders and invaded countries. Italians, Spaniards, English, Russians, Bosnians, Canadians, every high society had fleur-de-lis stamped onto something. There have been countless hypotheses as to where the design originally sprouted from. For example, the Gates of Ishtar in Babylonia, or manuscripts from the 14th century. However, the most common belief is that it is a stylish wild lily, a flower that was mostly associated with the goddess Juno, a figure venerated by the Romans as the queen of gods and the wife of Jupiter. Number 3. Okay, the I'm alright signal, which in some countries will get you barred from the pub, is actually a sacred emblem in Buddhism and Hinduism. The hand gesture, which in many cases can also be translated into text or pictures, signifies methakamdra, which translates into mudra of discussion. It's a way for practitioners to hail their faith and transmit their inclination of spreading the teachings of Lord Buddha. In other words, it's essentially the exotic and Buddhist equivalent of crossing yourself in the name of Jesus. Number 2. The lightning bolt. Never has a symbol signified so many things with so little. This icon could easily reference the mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a DC speedster named Flash, the Nazi movement, a charging station for your mobile phone, and the wrath of God. The lightning bolt is one of the oldest and most recognized icons in history. It's bridged and overpassed civilization's gaps, popping up almost supernaturally throughout history in different extreme, far-off points of the planet. Cavemen and Neanderthals scratched them on caves hundreds of times. Civilizations of Norse, Roman, Greek, and Native American descent also linked it with sky gods and their divine punishment. The Navajo identified it as the tag and insignia of the Thunderbird. Its origin, therefore, as you can imagine, is pretty straightforward and erratic, offhand, and slapdash representation of one of primitive man's most prehistoric fear: fire from the sky. Number 1. Swastika. Never has a symbol being hated more than the swastika, an ancient icon stolen and plundered by a mustache madman. Nowadays, you can't look at swastika without feeling the need to kick some Nazi sobs straight in the balls. It has become a beacon of cruelty, dehumanization, and absolute holds no bar evil. Sadly, in this venerable symbol defense, this is something vogue and avant-garde. This is something completely new up until the Nazis got hold of it in the 30s. The swastika, also known as the Gamadian cross, was one of the holiest symbols in the world. It has been featured in Buddhism, Hinduism. Every ancient civilization and society exploited its patterns for everything from roadmaps to interior design. Old laundries in Ireland, breweries, and even the Finnish and Latvian Air Force supported it. The oldest depiction, and where many believers originally zigzagged from, was way back in India, when men were first abandoning being nomads and started to get organized. The polytheist religion, Hinduism, employed it as a sign of two of its most powerful deities. Clockwise represented Vishnu, the supreme being, he who dreams reality into existence. And counterclockwise, you had Kalia take no prisoners badass dame who makes Sarah Connor look like a baby. So that's it, 10 symbols and icons that can be found everywhere, and they're seriously messed up in strange history. Were there any missed in this countdown? Let us know in the comments section below.